Hey guys, this is On Track GP. I'm Jamie Chambers, and today we are looking at all the records held and broken by Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen has put together an unbelievably dominant season in 2023, becoming a three-time world champion, but also breaking a lot of records too. The rest of the grid may not be concerned with checking the record books, and will definitely want to forget the number of Dutch flags now on show on the official Formula One driver records page. However, On Track GP have done the hard work and broken down all the records Max Verstappen has been able to either match or beat this season, and the records he is still building going into 2024. For context, Max Verstappen already has plenty of records under his belt, and with a car finally able to match his ability, there is no telling just where he might stop. Even from his very first race, Verstappen has been breaking Formula One records. If you search Formula One records and look for any category where the word youngest appears, you will often find the Dutchman's name at the top of the list. He entered the sport in 2015, and through a mixture of his famous last name and his much heralded young talent, he was talked about as being a potential generational icon. Formula One, as is the case with any sport, is often guilty of placing too much expectation too soon on the shoulders of its future stars, but in Verstappen's case, he is living up to the billing. An F1 education spent fighting with a dominant Mercedes has crafted him into an efficient title winner who could go on to break every record going. With that in mind, here are the records he already possesses and a look at the ones he could surpass in both the near and far future. We start with Max Verstappen's youngest driver records. As some of these records are now 8 years old, we're going to skim over these to get to some of the recent records from the last couple years. Youngest driver to start a race, 17 years and 166 days, Australian Grand Prix 2015. In 2015, Dutch teenager Verstappen made his F1 debut at the Australian Grand Prix, breaking the previous record of 19-year-old Jamie Alguersuari. This particular record looks to be set in stone now for Verstappen, with the FIA introducing a new rule in 2021 stating that F1 drivers must be 18 years old or over to compete. Youngest F1 driver in Q3, youngest driver to score points, 17 years and 180 days, Malaysian Grand Prix 2015. Verstappen scored his first points on his F1 career in Malaysia, reaching Q3 during qualifying and beating Kimi Raikkonen, Felipe Massa, Romain Grosjean and Valtteri Bottas to start P6 on the grid. The race itself saw him slip down a place, eventually finishing P7. Similarly to the previous record, this is unlikely to be broken, with the current F1 drivers Lance Stroll and Lando Norris occupying the second and third spots respectively. Youngest driver to win a race, youngest F1 podium, youngest driver to lead a lap. 18 years and 228 days, Spanish Grand Prix 2016. Having replaced the out-of-favour Kvyat at Red Bull in 2015, this was when Verstappen really announced himself. While the 2016 Grand Prix is perhaps most memorable for the Silver Arrows war as Rosberg and Hamilton rammed each other off the road, the sight of Verstappen going on to win his first race is one that lives long in the memory. The race in Barcelona also saw Verstappen become the youngest podium sitter, beating the previous record of Vettel by more than 2 years. Lance Stroll came close to taking this record off Verstappen when he finished third at the 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but he was 11 days older than the Dutchman at the time of doing so. It was a hat-trick of records for Verstappen that day, as he again beat Vettel to become the youngest driver to lead a lap. Verstappen is the only teenager to have ever led a lap, with Vettel completing the feat at the age of 20 and Charles Leclerc at 21. Youngest driver to set a fastest lap, 19 years and 44 days, Brazilian Grand Prix 2016. 181 days on from his record-breaking race in Barcelona, Verstappen would pick up another accolade when he became the youngest driver to set a fastest lap. He clocked a 1:25.305 on the 67th lap in wet conditions on his way to third place behind Hamilton and Rosberg. The lap record at Interlagos is set by Bottas at 1:10.540 in 2018. Verstappen's time in 2016 moved him ahead of Rosberg, who had the previous record of 20 years and 258 days in 2006. Youngest driver to score a Grand Slam, 23 years and 277 days, Austrian Grand Prix 2021. This is when the driver achieves pole position, the race victory, and the fastest lap of the Grand Prix all over the course of the same race weekend. Max Verstappen, with 14 wins, 13 fastest laps and 6 pole positions, finally achieved this career milestone at the 2021 Austrian Grand Prix. In qualifying, he clocked a 1:03.720 for pole. In the race, he led from lap 1 to 71, finishing 17 seconds ahead of second place Bottas. On the 62nd lap, he secured the fastest lap with a time of 1:06.2, setting a new record for his Grand Chelem and setting a new record overall. With 7 youngest drivers' records to his name, Max Verstappen has an impressive tally. The only ones he doesn't hold are the youngest world champion and youngest pole position, both held by Sebastian Vettel. We now take a look at more current records, and the majority has either matched or broken this season. Most podium finishes in a season, 2023, 21 podiums. Looking solely at the podium places, Max has stood on the podium 21 times this season, with Singapore being his only finish outside the top 3. This does mean Schumacher's 2002 campaign remains the only time a driver has stood on the podium for every single race throughout the season. But for Verstappen, he beat his own 2021 record, where he picked up 18 podiums in a season, making the record even more difficult to break in the future. Along with that record, amongst those 21 podiums this year, we saw a run of 15 consecutive top 2 finishes from Verstappen, which ended again at the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix. That meant Max matched Schumacher's record from 2002 for the most consecutive top 2 finishes, and with even more races being added to the calendar next year, you would back Verstappen to go clear in this category. Most points in a single season, 575 points. With that kind of dominance and leading the grid more often than not, you are bound to pick up a lot of points along the way. To be precise, Max Verstappen finished the 2023 season on top of the driver standings with a total 575 points. He has the previous record holder, having scored the most points in a season during his 22 campaign, where he scored 454 points. That means Verstappen scored an additional 121 points this year with the same number of races. Most consecutive points scored, 1,004. 1,004 points and counting for Max as he continues a streak started back at Emilia-Romagna in 2022. He has surpassed Lewis Hamilton's total of 998 set back in 2020 and looks to add to this total come the start of the 24 season. Highest percentage points per race started, 13.98 per race. Surpassing Lewis Hamilton by 0.0%, Max has taken 2,586 points from 185 starts for an average 13.98 points per race, edging out Lewis's 13.97 per race from 4,639 points. Most wins in a single season, 19 wins. A pretty obvious record that was also set by Verstappen last season with 15 wins from 22 races. However, after Max stood on the top step of the podium in Mexico, he broke his own record of 15 wins by claiming his 16th. Then he continued to smash it even more with another 3 victories to finish the season, meaning from 22 races this season, he managed to win 19 of them. Which means Max Verstappen also broke another record that was set back in Formula One's 3rd ever season. We'll get to that shortly. Most wins in a calendar month, 6, July 2023. Max took victories at Austria, Great Britain, Hungary and Belgium. This only edges out Lewis Hamilton as Verstappen also took sprint wins in Austria and Belgium. Highest win percentage in a season, 86.3%. In 1953, after winning 6 of the 8 races that year for Ferrari, Ascari won the World Championship. This record of 75% stood for more than 70 years until Max Verstappen broke it this season. Not only did he break the record, but he smashed it. As I previously mentioned, Max has won the winner trophy 19 times this season from 22 Grand Prix, for an 86.3% win rate. Taking into account the number of races we now have in a season and the fact that it will only get bigger from here, the record could stand for another 70 years. Most consecutive wins, 10. From one dominant Red Bull era to another, Sebastian Vettel's 9 consecutive race wins was beaten by his successor at a Red Bull World Champion, as Max Verstappen managed to go one better and picked up 10 wins in a row from Miami to Monza. This year, only the Singapore Grand Prix was able to stop Max Verstappen, but he would say since then that he has picked up 7 wins in a row from Japan to Abu Dhabi, so he has the record for the most and also the 3rd most consecutive wins in the same season, and 7 could easily become more if the 24 season starts in winning form. Most sprint race wins in a season and overall, 4 and 7. There are also sprint races that are loved and hated as they may now be. The sprint race has also started in 2021, so these are fresh records to say the least. Valtteri Bottas managed 2 sprint wins in 2021. Max Verstappen matched that in 2022 with race wins in Imola and Austria. But this season we jumped from 3 sprints to 6 sprints, and Verstappen managed to win in Austria, Belgium, Austin and Brazil, meaning 4 sprint race victories in total this season. Only Sergio Perez in Baku and Piastri in Qatar stopped the clean sweep. Most pole positions converted to wins, 16. Most wins from pole in a season, 12. Nigel Mansell managed to turn 9 of his pole positions into wins during the 92 season, which was the most until Max Verstappen blasted past that record. Max has turned every pole position start he had into a victory this season, which means he now holds the record with 12 wins from the front of the grid, which is astonishing for a team that is known for setting their car up for the race over qualifying. That record is also part of a wider record that Red Bull driver currently owns that goes back into the 2022 season. By going from pole to win in Abu Dhabi, he's converted his past 16 pole positions into victories, a run that dates back to the 2022 Dutch Grand Prix. The last time he actually failed to convert a pole position into a victory was the 2022 Austrian Grand Prix, which was won by Charles Leclerc. And I know it seems like Max always wins when Leclerc is on pole, but at least Leclerc has the 2022 Austrian Grand Prix where he can say he overcame Max Verstappen. And maybe he'll be the driver to stop this streak in 2024. This is not to discount the wins from other positions on the grid, where in 2022 he set the record for most wins not starting from pole position and 12 wins, and also most wins from different grid positions in a season, with 7 different grid positions converted to wins. Most hat-tricks in a season. Of those 12 pole positions this year, 6 have been part of a Formula 1 hat-trick. Before this season, the record was held by 2 absolute legends from very different eras, with a total of 5 hat-tricks being achieved by Ascari in 1952 and Michael Schumacher in 2004. But Max has just about beaten that by picking up hat-tricks in Spain, Austria, the UK, Japan and Qatar, as well as a hat-trick in Abu Dhabi to round out the season. Most pit stops to still win a race, 6 pit stops. Another niche record is the most pit stops made while still winning a Grand Prix. Jenson Button set the standard by making 6 pit stops in 2011 Canadian Grand Prix while still managing to win, although that Canadian Grand Prix may well be amongst some of the most chaos seen in a race. Max Verstappen's win was a lot less dramatic at his home Grand Prix, although the drivers were forced to pit for intermediate tyres at the end of lap 3, and after starting on slicks before the conditions constantly changed between wet and dry, Verstappen led the race throughout and took the victory fairly comfortably, but he did match the record for having the most pit stops in a race. Earliest title win, 6 races remaining. Schumacher in 2002 won his 5th championship at the season's 11th round, where he won the French Grand Prix, meaning there were 6 Grand Prix remaining in that season. Max Verstappen sealed his championship in October after the Qatar Grand Prix sprint race, where technically there were only 5 race weekends after Qatar. However, because this was accomplished after the sprint race, it meant that Max Verstappen clinched the title with 6 Grand Prix left in the season. Biggest World Championship winning margin points, 290 points. But not only is that a crazy amount of points, it's also led to the biggest gap between first and second we've ever seen. Sebastian Vettel won the championship in 2013 with 397 points from Fernando Alonso's 242, meaning a 155 point gap between championship winner and the next best driver. Max Verstappen has managed to almost double that this season, managing to score 575 points, where his teammate Sergio Perez in the next best standings with 285 points. That gave Verstappen a comfortable lead of 290 points to the next best driver, who was also in the same machinery this year. Biggest World Championship winning margin, 50.4%. As you may expect, having over double the points to the next best driver in the championship, this has also led to Max Verstappen getting the record for the biggest percentage difference between first and second place. In 1992, Mansell scored 41.8% more points than Riccardo Patrese in second, as Mansell had 108 points to Patresi's 56, whilst 5 years later, Villeneuve held the same percentage margin over Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Schumacher, who scored just 3 points less than Villeneuve, was disqualified from the 1997 championship, so you can judge that one for yourself. But it's safe to say that Max now firmly holds this record with a 50.4% margin over Sergio Perez. First Dutch F1 World Championship. Verstappen is the only Dutch Formula One World Champion to date. Most expensive super license ever. Max Verstappen also breaks a record not related to racing itself, but in 2023 he had to pay an unprecedented amount for his super license. This is the highest amount ever and came to €953,800. Most laps led, 1,003. Another one of the records that truly show the dominance of Max Verstappen along with the reliability of the Red Bull car by discussing laps led. In terms of total laps led, Verstappen remarkably broke this record with 5 Grand Prix and 2 sprint races left to go this season. Sebastian Vettel managed to lead the grid for 769 laps in 2013 in his Red Bull, but Verstappen became the first driver to lead the pack for over 1,000 laps in Abu Dhabi, pushing his total to 1,003 laps led in the 2023 campaign. Highest percentage of laps led, 75.7%. This also means that he's taken Jim Clark's 1963 record for the highest percentage of laps led in a season. Jim Clark managed to lead 71.47% of the laps in that season, but that season was 506 of 708 laps, and it took 60 years for this record to change hands. But Max leading in 1,003 of 1,325 means that he has led the grid for 75.7% of the season, which is a considerable margin to second place. Most races leading the championship, 39 consecutive races. And the fact that Max Verstappen has led the championship from start to finish this season means that he's also beaten another record related to being top of the championship. When Charles Leclerc retired from the 22 Spanish Grand Prix, Max Verstappen took the win and overtook his Ferrari rival for the championship lead that weekend. And he's been there ever since, winning the 22 World Championship and the 2023 campaign. Max Verstappen ends the 23 season having led the championship for 39 consecutive Grand Prix, beating Schumacher's previous tally of 37. And this record could continue to grow in 2024 if he manages to win the first race in March. There are, however, still plenty of records not yet taken by Max Verstappen. These include most fastest laps in a season, though he came very close this year. Most consecutive top 2 finishes, 15, though he could equal this in the first 2 races of 2024. Most career wins, which we will look at in the next video. Total entries and starts and most consecutive entries and race starts. Most races with a single constructor. And highest percentage of race wins to entries. Some of those may never be broken, but given that Max now has over 30 records to his name along with 3 world titles, never say never with Max Verstappen. Thanks for joining us as we covered most of the astonishing feats and records amassed by Max Verstappen in Formula One. Did we miss any records? Can you think of any other records that Max Verstappen has yet to take? What record will be next for Max? Let us know what you think in the comments, and remember to like, comment, share and subscribe. This has been On Track GP. I've been Jamie Chambers. Keep the pedal to the metal, and I'll catch you in the next video.